Sometimes the biggest, most profound questions aren't hiding in some distant galaxy or a super complex equation. Nope, sometimes they're sitting right there on your dinner table. Today, we're diving into how one of the most common things on Earth, just plain old salt, can actually lead us to question the very nature of our universe.
So right off the bat, here's the paradox that get this whole thing started. Just think about it for a second. We literally need salt to live. Our bodies just can't function without it. And yet, you can walk into any store and buy a huge container of it for what, a couple of bucks? So why? Why is something so absolutely essential also so incredibly cheap and abundant? This simple question is the key the author uses to unlock a much, much deeper investigation.
Now, before we get to the big cosmic theory, you gotta understand that for the author, this isn't just some abstract thought experiment. His focus on salt comes from seeing very real, very human consequences when he was growing up. The stakes here are incredibly high. We're talking life and death.
Yeah, so this all stems from two really powerful memories from his childhood that just stuck with him. First, he remembers seeing a woman with a goiter, and his grandmother told him it was from not getting enough iodized salt. Then, he noticed that a couple of nearby villages seemed to have a lot of people with intellectual disabilities. His own father suspected it was because they were trying to save money by using this impure salt they got from a local gully. So these two experiences really hammered home a crucial idea for him. Having the right kind of salt is absolutely vital for human health.
Okay, so to really get why he takes these observations and builds a whole universal theory from them, we have to take a little detour into his personal story. He actually calls his own past a kind of bitter salt. It's the story of sacrifice and loss that completely shaped his worldview.
He paints this incredibly vivid picture of where he grew up. He talks about an orchard, a big vegetable garden, just spectacular views all around. He even mentions drinking clear, sweet water right from the local springs his entire youth. You get this really deep sense of connection to a place that he saw as, just uniquely beautiful and life-giving.
And then, it was just gone. The author writes that his town was literally sacrificed, flooded, to create the Lifechanyuan reservoir. And he points out this was a massive project that brought wealth and power to 5 other provinces, but it came at the cost of his entire community's existence.
And this quote, wow, it just drives home that feeling of being completely forgotten. He asks, what did my family get for giving up our home, our land, everything? The answer? Sets of the selected works of Mao Zedong. And he notes, with this really sharp sense of irony, that because government reps came 5 different times, his family just ended up with 5 identical sets. This whole experience of personal sacrifice for the quote-unquote greater good, with what felt like 0 meaningful recognition, really informs everything that comes next.
And that brings us right back to the main argument. The author takes his deeply personal story of what's scarce, things like compensation or recognition, and he contrasts it with what he sees as abundant in the natural world. He's pivoting from his own bitter history to a universal principle he thinks it helps reveal.
Okay, so this table right here, this is the absolute core of his theory. On one side, you've got the essentials for life: air, water, salt. On the other, you've got what he calls ornamentals. Basically luxuries like gold, pearls, and diamonds. The pattern he points out is pretty striking, right? The things we absolutely need to survive are supplied in abundance, and they're easy to get. But the things we don't really need, the fancy stuff, that's all scarce and hard to obtain. He even breaks it down further into this kind of hierarchy of needs. So air is obviously the most critical. Without it, you die in minutes, so it's everywhere and it's totally free. Water's next. You can only last a few days without it, and even though it's not as free as air, it's still incredibly plentiful. And then there's salt. You can go longer without it, but eventually your body will give out. And so, just like the others, it's supplied in these vast quantities, from the basically inexhaustible oceans.
So this is his big conclusion. He argues that nature itself seems to operate on a simple rule. The more important something is for life, the more of it there is. It's an elegant logic. When you think about it, essentials are abundant, non-essentials are rare.
All right, so after laying out his personal story, the real-world observations, and this universal principle that he's worked out, the author brings it all home with one final and really profound question. This is the moment where that simple thought about salt just explodes into a cosmic-level inquiry.
And there it is. He leaves us with this massive question. Is this whole elegant system, where the things we need to live are always provided in abundance, is that just a random, happy accident of physics and chemistry? Or does it actually suggest a deliberate design, a purposeful arrangement by some kind of mysterious power or intelligence? He doesn't give us an answer. He just lays out the evidence as he sees it, from a woman's goiter in his village all the way to the salt in the sea.
and he leaves that final giant question for us to think about.